Hey, Kadota show. It's about time I gave you a good voiceover intro,
Hey,
Danny. How are
I
you, my
love it,
friend?
Phil. I'm good. I'm good.
You are looking
Been
good.
pumped all week.
I know,
I
right?
mean, hell, you and I started out with that sushi breakfast. How good is that?
That is
Yeah,
beyond
it's
good. That
it's
was so
unbelievable.
good, wasn't it?
Well, here's one of the aspects that we want to bring into. Now, you and I just talked about that is, you guys, if your wives get involved and they get to get involved with this, and this is why I brought Andy Matsuda, who owns the Sushi Chef Institute. I brought him into it a few years ago. Is because, you know, the fish processing and has come up, and the grade of fish has come up now with all the processing plants, and now you got this primo fish that you can serve sashimi and sushi, and whether you're taking an intro course or anything like something very simple from Andy, and they learn, your wives or even you learn how to do all this stuff. Your parties go off the charts, to where the women are probably going to be telling you, get your behind out the door, go fish and get me some fish. Now, how good is that?
Oh my
It
God.
doesn't get any better than that,
No,
guys.
I'm
Come
telling
on.
you.
So anyway, we're kind of leaning that route. Even Andy is getting involved with doing some articles now for some of the magazines and things like that. But he's staying busy with his schools. And
He's
Phil
over
and
in
I,
Torrance, California.
Yep, Phil and I got to experience it for a breakfast.
Thanks to you.
And we had fish bones for the first time. It was one of
Oh,
the most delicious things I've ever had in my life. Who would have thought? You know how many tons of fish bones I've thrown out over the years? So it's amazing. So
I was
we're
telling my
good.
wife that today, and she gave me this look like, what? Fish bones? I go, hey, it was really good. I'm
Unbelievable.
telling you.
Unbelievable.
Even you would like it, I told her.
Well, he stays on edge with all that stuff, and boy, I'll tell you, that's a winner.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. Dan and Kim Smith say good evening. Phil, Danny, and all the folks from the Friedman Adventure family. And of course, that's all the great folks watching. Albert Ponce, my dear friend, his wife Crystal, his kids, they were out to dinner tonight. He says, Buenas noches, fellas. Buenas noches, Albert. It's great to be here. And we've got a lot to talk about because this bluefin tuna bite is still going on. Now, we're going to have some weather starting Saturday night, and it's going to get very nasty, and it looks like it'll go down the tubes for a couple days, Danny. But when we come out of that weather, I've seen this time and time again this year. We get a storm that looks like it spells the end of the season, and they bite again. So I don't know what to think.
Well, Phil, with the amount of feed, the biomass out there with the chovies, the sardines, the squid, these things really don't have to migrate back and forth across the Pacific anymore. They stay here, and I'm sure between the banks, Cortez, Tanner, Cherry, all these banks, and the Clemente and Catalina, all that squid that's abounds, all the different areas. From here down to Colonette, I don't think they have to go any further than that. They might go a little further south, but it seems to have been sustaining a tremendous amount of bluefin the last, I don't know how many years now. And, I don't see that going away.
Brian Wynn was telling me that Jim Hughes, Rambo, he says, I see him in January, I see him in February, I see him in March, I see him all year long.
Yeah,
They're here
yeah,
now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just getting the right approach. Yeah, we may be fishing with a lead-headed squid. Who cares? We're ready for it.
How cool is that? It's like catching calico bass.
Yeah, it gravitated from the big fish and everything else. So last week, when I went out, I was fishing these things. I started out with this, because I was amongst 30 experienced captains, and when I saw that they're eating the lighter line and smaller baits, and they're getting bit on 20, I had this hook on 20. Now, this is a phenomenal albacore hook. It's a light-ringed gamakatsu, and if you're fishing albies and that size tuna, that 20-pound tuna, you're not going to get bit better. It's unbelievable. These things weigh, with the ring, 350 milligrams. Now, standard 9176 mustad, 450 milligrams. Now, you and I can't feel that difference, but that little chovy can. So it makes a huge difference on the baits.
It's all about that bait looking natural, right?
Oh, my God, yeah. I can't tell you during those albacore years when they're eating the 20 and the light line, I just smoked them with these hooks. I made the mistake of fishing them that day, and I happened to hook one of those bigger units on this, and I, when I had it up and down, I ended up straightening out the hook. So I went a little heavy. There was a progression. Then I went to an owner Gorilla, but it was a Gorilla Light. Still not knowing how big they were, I straightened that one out, before I went to good old standby Mustad, a 4X, and it's a 1/0, and once I straightened out that problem of straightening out the hooks,
Straightening out
we were good.
problem.
That's exactly it. That was exactly it.
Steve Bermudez was extremely bored in Ensenada, Baja California, until now. He says, thank you. I'm no longer bored. I have a great show to watch with you all. Anybody has a question for Danny Kadota, now's your chance. And Brandon does have one. He says, hey, Mr. Kadota, do you think the bluefin tuna will bite 365 days a year here? It reminds me of the damn orcas we got that just live in California now. Is that possible? They bite, or they're hanging out, or?
Ask you, what do you think the orcas are eating?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they like that maguro sushi too. So I think they're here year round. The amount of biomass with the squid, the chovies, and the sardines, they may fluctuate. They go bank to bank, Cortez to Tanner to the Osborne to East End of Clemente, where you got all the squid and Clemente all over on a lot of the banks. There's such a huge biomass to sustain a huge volume of tuna. And from there down into Mexico, there's really no need for them to go do the trans-Pacific pack and go back and forth. The feed here could sustain them by what we have here naturally now. So, yeah, I could see that being a 12-month deal. I mean, when COVID first came about, and this is, I think we were doing the Hall show, and we just finished out the Hall show. We went on the Tomahawk for a day and a half. We got those things down at Collinet, and it was a one-stopper on those fish. And I was lucky enough to get we were eating the fly line with 50, and I got a 170 with the 50 on that. And I was lucky because it tail wrapped. Otherwise, I may not have got that, But then the next day we moved up, one stop for that day. Next day we move up to Punta Banda, one stop there on the 60 to 80. So, you're looking at the different grade fish that we're catching, and you're in them all day. Yeah, there's a lot of fish out there.
God.
And I don't think they're going anywhere for a long time. I mean, they're home guards now,
Do you think this is going to be like this from now on? Do you think
I think so, but you
never know. Mother Nature's very.
I mean, it was like, and I've said this many times. If many of you that have been around long enough, it was in 1983. We had El Nino. Okay, and the water got really hot. The kelp all died here.
Yeah.
And the biologist said the oceans are dying. And
doom and gloom.
Yeah, doom and gloom.
You hear that now.
Everybody panicked, and and I think I mentioned this before. We were able to. Ralph Miller put H&M up for sale, and my dad and partners bought the landing that year. And that's with biologists saying the oceans are dead. Well, in a matter of months, I can remember being on the east end of Clemente fishing Persane Rock. And my 10 dB, I'm shooting over Clemente, listening to the guys going in albacore stops in late May, early June. So they're not talking about that many months. But it went from hot water to albacore water. And 84 and 85 record albacore years.
Yep.
Record albacore years. There wasn't anything that floated ran out to chase those albies, because you get those things and people go crazy.
I know.
The chicken of the sea. But yeah, so whatever Mother Nature dictates, I go by, not what biologists, because I've seen too many of those things go sideways.
Hey, when I hear doom and gloom, and I hear it nowadays, I grab my wallet because somebody's got a grift going. Not all the time, but they're trying to scare you into instead of here are the facts. Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying that global warming isn't a thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when you run into somebody who's thinks the world's coming to an end, and you say to them, could you lay out the facts, please, for me that support your side? They don't have them. They're repeating what somebody else said, which may or may not be true. But if you're Some of these kids nowadays are depressed. I talked to a young lady who's not going to get married, not going to have kids because the world's coming to an end. And if I asked her to explain to me, she can't do it. She's taking the word of somebody
Yeah.
who's making a whole bunch of money out of scaring the hell out of you. And like I say, I'm not taking a position here, but you should look into it yourself if you're not going to get married and
Yeah.
have kids and base your whole life on this.
Thanks to a very good friend of ours who's now gone, Russ Heiser, I've learned not to pull my punches anymore with a lot of stuff. And that came about many times with this industry. One of them was Russ called me to go to a hearing up in Santa Barbara because of these MPLAs, these closures. And I said, well, what's the basis of the closure? And they go, because, there's these biologists are saying there's a depletion of sand bass up there. I says, well, when was the survey? Well, it was done in the fall. I hope they're depleted in the fall. They run down south in the fall to go spawn back in Mexico, and not even knowing this and being completely wrong, on their premise, they still closed it. So to me, I don't give them. And they were the same biologists that said the ocean was dying in 1983 with El Nino. And here we have a cold water fish, albacore. We have a record year in 84 and 85. So, as far as what they know, what I know is they know nothing, But it's time on the water, it's experience, and of which they didn't have any. One more example. All these cowcod closures and black sea bass closures, things like that, what are they based on, right? So you look at these things, and I'll give you two different things, like with the black sea bass. Why wouldn't you do a regulated sell, tags like you would for an elk or something, with a black sea bass? Because when you get these black mature sea bass, how much of these calico bass, sheephead, whitefish, all these other sport fish that we catch, do they eat? And how much does it take to sustain a 300-pound fish? So some of these things are really thrown off like crazy, along with the cowcod now, okay? You have all these cowcod closures, and yet they're seeing cowcod in 30 fathoms. We never saw cowcod in 30 fathoms. Commercial fish, we used to start out at about 100 fathoms. But, it's telling me that there's such a big population of these things that there's, it's a sustainable industry, that it needs to be monitored better. And now that we have decompression chambers where they can take a cow and put them in a decompression chamber and put them down and track them, now what they found is this, okay? The Outer Limits has that decompression chamber. They catch a cow, a small one. They put the tag on them. They send them down, with a tracking device. Now, this fish was caught on the 43, if anybody knows where that is. That's 38 miles out of San Diego, on kind of a course line to the east end of San Clemente Island, okay? So you're looking at a cow who's kind of like me. I'm not doing any wind sprints, right, anymore. I'm not a kid. And, got the bulk, so am I going to, how far am I going to travel? Maybe the east end of Clemente, maybe the 60-mile bank, at the outside, maybe Tanner, Cortez, 1 week later, can you imagine where this thing was? It was outside Point Conception.
Wow.
So, it's like a tuna.
Yeah.
So if we don't know that, those biologists sure as heck don't know that. So how can you make legislation based on that, not knowing it? There's where my problem is with this side of the industry. It's with the biologists, that they come right out of college, never been on a boat, never fished, don't understand the industry or the fishery, and they're making decisions. Not a good thing, folks.
Tony Gonzalez says, tell it like it is, Danny. Good job. Dr. Dread Fred says, I'm late, but I made it. Good evening, fellas. Brandon wants to know, Danny, do you see albacore taking advantage of the biomass of bait that the bluefin tuna have here? I can't name a species who wouldn't leave food to find food, or who would leave food to find food.
No. I wouldn't, would you?
No.
No, you're not. Absolutely. And I think we're going to have to understand is that it's cycles. It's just cycles.
Yeah.
We don't know. We never knew we'd have albacore years like we did in 84 and 85. I mean, it was unbelievable. Boats were paid off. New boats were bought. It brought a lot to the industry, And it's funny, as great as this bluefin fishing is, and it is, albacore bring people out of the woodwork. You know, it's the white meat tuna. It's pretty special. You can can. I mean, it's just a win-win deal.
Yeah,
I
people-
guarantee you, if you thought we were busy, all the boats now, you get albacore coming in, and it goes bananas.
And people ask me all the time, why on earth are people going to get crazier about 20 to 40 pound albacore when we have 200-pound bluefin? And I don't know how to explain it, but there is such a buzz of excitement around albacore.
It's a white meat tuna, and as a boat owner and skipper, they're not usually line shy. I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, I was just telling you, using these hooks, you can get away with lighter hooks and catch them left and right, and because they are lighter, the chovies will swim. So it's going to separate the guys that know how to fish the chovies, fly line chovies, from everybody else. But you can get them on a sinker, a split shot a lot of times. But if you know how to fly line, you're gold. You're golden, And it's a much simpler fish, but it's always been the chicken of the sea, and it's a white meat tuna. Aesthetics are beautiful. It's great for barbecue. It's just a win-win deal, but people will come out of the woodworks to catch albacore. It's unbelievable.
Brandon says he's not wrong. That's you. These damn MLPAs don't give a damn about basic science that you learn in high school. They spend 5 days a year monitoring while we have captains doing this 365 days a year.
You know what it is? It's about the almighty buck that they're generating from the University of California and from all these grants that they get from these people. It doesn't mean they know anything. Trust me. I've had plenty of run-ins, and they, to me, for the most part, they have a hard time telling which side's the head and which side's the tail, and that's what I've seen over time. I'm sorry, but I when we get off into political things, I start going off a little bit when it starts going beyond common sense, and they've gone way beyond that.
Yeah.
With everything.
And so would you say that's what's going on with the rockfish closure now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can see monitoring. That's for our own good. And, Phil, you can remember that, we used to fish 15 hooks, over on overnight boats, fishing San Nick, Tanner, Cortez, and loading up, and that was overkill. But, 15 of those fish, and we were fishing a little deeper. But now when you start seeing these fish gravitating into shallow water, it's telling me that they're overpopulated in the deeper water, and they're moving around looking for more bait. So if you're starting to get them in 30 fathoms, we never saw them at 30 fathoms before. So it's telling me they probably got a substantial population because nobody's commercial fishing them. You don't have gill netters doing that like they did back in our day. So I'm sure there's a glut of them. And you got to be careful because then you got to worry about the biomass of bait. That gets wiped out. Yeah, then you're going to be in trouble.
No. You've mentioned before to me this whole thing about black sea bass and how much fish the 100-pound black sea bass consumes in a day. It reminds me of a study that some guy did about house cats in Ireland, and he actually went into it, and at the end of the year, they devoured 6 billion birds, and I mean, they made a huge impact. So now you take this giant creature, they're eating all kinds of calico bass, whitefish, and everything else, right?
Unbelievable.
And they're pretty plentiful now, aren't they?
Yeah, plentiful.
You know they are.
Oh my God, I haven't even fished them hard, and I remember, got one at Catalina, about a 30-pound. I got one on the Horseshoe, got one at Point Furman locally right here. I mean, if that's not thick enough for you, nothing is. It's crazy. And that's on 15-pound, 20-pound line. I'm fishing for calicos, And, what they eat as far as calico bass, sand bass, whitefish, sheephead, and you're worried about putting limits and size limits on everything else, you need to rethink that. Because what the damage that a mature black sea bass does is ridiculous. And I think they should draw tags like they do for elk or deer, and allow them. Because number one, they're delicious. Two, when they do get that big, They eat so much of that biomass, and sport fish, smaller game fish, it's ridiculous. Barracuda, they eat a lot of everything, basically everything.
Right.
So they do need to thin those out.
It would be
and
incredible.
monitor it.
It'd be incredible to know
Absolutely.
what the black sea bass population consumes
Oh.
in a given year. I bet you would be astounded.
Absolutely, you have to sustain something that big.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't feed it peanuts, and it's not going to survive. It's not going to survive on anchovies. They're gonna go after the meat.
Anybody has a question for Danny, now's the time to do it. And Naughty Boy 78 says, Danny, congratulations on your new show. Last week was great. Tell us a story about you and Yo. We all respect Yo's years of dedication to the sport. What do you think about a tribute to Yo episode? We should do that.
You know what? I'll do that. Maybe I'll bring in some of the guys. Yo used to charter the Mustang, and
He chartered with
love,
you?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he and Ruthie, his wife, and
That's my wife
and
there.
all the guys. Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we look in, and Phil grew up in the South Bay too, and we had tremendous fishermen here, and in Southern California in general. And I think I tried to mention this before. A lot has to do with our population. We come out of a very technical environment. You got aerospace, Disney, JPL, Hollywood. Our fishermen aren't normal fishermen. We're out there pushing the limits on everything, particularly technical tackle and things like that. We're going to tweak it. I never settled for tackle. I kept playing with stuff, improving it. I mean, even when I got into bass fishing in high school, we started making our own spinner baits. I would buy my crank plugs and plastic worms and things like that, but my spinner baits, we'd take tuna wire and make them out of tuna wire. But I can remember implementing ball bearing swivels on a spinner bait before any manufacturer did. And the spin on that is tremendous. So, but here's where our mindset is. Phil, we grew up in the South Bay, and you had Jerry's, we had, Yo's and Arts. We had some of the, but all the shops in Southern California were great shops because they had to be. Johnny's up in Pasadena. Johnny's was open in the 1950s. Tremendous shop.
Did you ever go by TC's Bait and Tackle?
Yes.
You know where that was?
Yes.
Yeah, right in Redondo there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was right across the street, so that when we got off the half-day fleet or whatever.
One of the old ones that I used to go to when I was 4 and 5 years old with my grandparents, Millie's.
Oh, there you go.
Over by the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Over by SC,
Right.
And really learned a lot there from even the age of 5. My grandpa would buy me a Western Outdoor News to read, and we'd go there Friday afternoon. I'd sleep over the house, and Saturday morning we were off somewhere fishing, whether it was half-day fishing or on the barges at Redondo or Norm's Landing, Pier Point, or even down to Oceanside for the day if the white sea bass are biting. But information that you get out of the tackle shops is invaluable. They're in touch with the consumers coming in every day.
Right.
Now, when the consumer comes in to buy a certain jig or certain this and that, generally an astute fisherman can kind of put that together. But then when you start talking to these guys and you get relationships with them, you get a lot of information. And that information is key, whether you're a sport fisherman or you're a captain. And that's what we were doing. We were gathering information the whole time. But, you learn so much from these guys in the shops. And, I'd always support them because, they're the best source of what's going on. They get the latest, they have, they're astute fishermen that know the little tricks. And you could do a lot by watching. You watch what people are picking up, Are you fishing an offset? Or a straight hook, straight shank? Offset gets like I like it for albacore fishing, especially lower collaring, because I get it for fly lining and the chovy for albacore and even my bluefin and stuff. It's awesome. But we got to the point now where with these things, how many people have done that in the past where you weigh these hooks and know that it's 350 milligrams with a ring, And like I said, for a certain size fish, it was one of the best I've ever seen for albacore. But, it's fishing chovies. And, so each specific hook and different manufacturer has its own little attributes and its pluses and minuses. And you'll understand that through time and by experience.
Somebody you know very, very well, Gail Kadota.
Yes,
She
I do.
agrees with Naughty Boy 78. She said it would be awesome to do a tribute to Yo. What do you think, Danny?
You know what?
I love it.
I will do one. And let's do it next week. I have albums.
Okay.
I have a lot of albums with Yo because he chartered the boat.
Perfect.
We have some. I have some great Yo stories, which is unbelievable. You know, I think one of the best stops we had one year. I think I may have even mentioned it. Where Ruthie, we were in Albuquerque stop with Yo's group, and because it's Yo's group, I stayed a little bit longer out there in the Albuquerque area.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we hang a big eye. Ruthie, his
wife.
wife,
Yeah.
hooks a big eye. Now
And I'm
we're on
guessing
it.
Ruthie's a small person, or not a big person.
Ruthie's a small person, and so they were on it for a long time. And there's added pressure on me. It was one of Leon's prototype CalStars, or back then it still may have been Sabre. I'm not, but it was a prototype rod. So now I got more pressure on me because it's a prototype. Yo's crew was in the galley, taking side plates, and it was like an Indy race. The guys would race over there, and they were on this thing for a long time. They would pop the side plate, put fresh drags in, a new side plate that was ready to go. And you could do that with a jig master, right? Unbelievable. That in itself, and a lot of the guys that were on that trip can confirm that for you, but it was unbelievable. And then I think even Jimmy Lou was on that trip. But some of the guys would come up in the wheelhouse, and when it got dark, they were tracking that big eye with my sonar. They're changing the sweep on it and the angles.
Oh, how cool.
They were tracking, it's at 25 feet now. And to make a long story short, we ended up losing the fish.
Oh, no.
After a long, way too long, I let it go. We got back 2 hours late to the dock, and I had a very, very upset group waiting at the dock. And I can't blame them. That was my fault. That was on me.
Yeah.
I should have never. You give them, most groups, you go, you know what? You got 20 minutes, and then I'm putting it in gear.
Yeah. Sorry.
And we got to go. But we got
Pull.
So I get back to the dock, and we were at Islandia. We had the lease from 84 to 87 there. And they were upset, and rightly so. We take them on, we take off, and we're late. And it so happens the fish moved up about 20 miles that night, and we were in them. The guys overran them back in the area that we left from, and we were in the heart of them. So
it worked out.
Telling you.
Was that group okay with you after
group
that?
I think we highlighted it, so it was good. But I mean, that was a fluky deal. That wouldn't have happened. I would have been out there with the rest of the guys 20 miles further down.
Right.
So you never know.
Your higher power was taking care of you.
Absolutely. You just never know what's going to happen.
Dino Ricchetti says, great show. Danny and Phil, just want to remind everybody, the Freedman Adventures team, family, that the Rollo Kids Raffle is on this Saturday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the BNS Brewery, Santee, California. $9,000 in raffle prizes for $1. I might have to go out there for that, Danny.
Whoa, Santee.
Yeah.
Santee. Well, I haven't been. I used to go fish down there. Well, I went to school down there, so we
Why,
do all
you've
the
lake
lakes.
fished around? Is there some good lakes around there?
Yeah, there's all kinds of lakes down Santee. Well, my dad's still around. He's 94. So if you're listening, Pop, you'll know this. But one of the main reasons for going to UC San Diego was San Diego, Botroff, and Larry Brown, those guys, brought in Florida bass to the San Diego lakes first in the 60s. And by the time we were rolling around, they were starting to mature, and they're starting getting some of these big largemouth bass in the San Diego lakes. That was one of the criteria for me to go into UC San Diego.
It wasn't based on academia, huh? It was based on where's the best fishing.
That, and it was, and Phil, I don't know if I showed you. We'll have to show this on one of the shows. I found one of the Yellowtail Derby pamphlets from 1966, and it'll blow you away. It was the Yellowtail Derby in '66, but it had all the boats at Point Loma, all the old skippers, the Dick Gatoshes and guys like that, Eddie Deals. But Albuquerque, you guys are going to flip on this. Yellowtail fishing, Coronado fishing was $12 a day. Albuquerque fishing was $15. Think about that.
Oh my
But
God.
fuel was probably 15 cents, 12 cents,
Yeah.
something like, for diesel. But it was amazing. So when I was in college, I can go fishing very inexpensively, and you know that on the bunk was $2, and I would sleep in the galley.
Yeah, me
because
too.
for $2 I could eat.
You have that
I could have a
NB on
hamburger
your
and a-
ticket, right?
That was
no
it.
bunk.
NB, yep,
Me too.
that's it. That was it.
And I try to sneak down into the bunk.
Oh yeah,
too.
yep.
Some of the guys would let you get away with
Yeah.
it.
So go to college. Go to college.
Well, yeah, but this brings up a question, and this is kind of not a fishing question. This is a philosophy of life question for you, Mr. Kadota.
Yeah.
And that is, what do you tell people who are out there listening, maybe youngsters or people that are thinking about a job change? What do you tell them about following their heart, following and doing something they really love in life? What do you tell them?
Do it. Let me tell you something. When you're doing something and that you're passionate about it, it's not work. And I did that every day. I thought I had 2 different lucrative job offers when I got out of, as I was graduating from UCSD. And, I was just, honest to goodness, I was looking out the ocean at Del Mar, and I'm asking God, which one of these jobs am I going to, I'm looking right at, and I had an unobstructed view, out to the west at Del Mar there. And I said, which one of these jobs am I going to take? Because they're both very lucrative. And you know what? Looking at the ocean, and this thing pops in that he just smacked me upside my head and says, "You're going fishing." And you know what? I never resented it. When I went home and told my dad, he couldn't stop laughing.
Because he thought you were kidding.
Yeah, and then he goes, "Yeah, no, really, what are you going to do?" I said, "That's what I want to do." He says, "Right, you're going to go work on a boat for $40 a day plus tips." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I want to do." But I think he knew in my heart, because it was such a passion. He saw me tweaking tackle from the time I was very young.
Yeah.
5 years old. Even my trout gear. How I worked the undercuts of Sierra Streams, and we just took everything to a different level. I would tweak my tackle. I'd change things with I was telling you, spinnerbait, when I made my own spinnerbaits, to ball bearings. So it was even before the industry did that. So it comes from your heart, and also it's not work. When you're doing something you're passionate about, it's not work. And so I see it, and I do endorse that in people if they want to go that route, because I know that if your heart's in it, you're going to be giving it 100%, and we'll never have to worry about that. And you're doing something you love.
I'm going to screw this all up because it's been a long time since I've read this, but Siddhartha went through this journey, and he was trying, his dad wanted him to be a lawyer or wanted him to be some big shot. Well, anyway, at the end of his life, he ends up being a ferry boat captain, and he's taking people from one side to the other, and he's getting an extreme amount of fulfillment out of this. And his other partner had gone off to meet the Buddha and try to figure it. And he comes in, he sees it, and he goes, "Wow, you found it. I haven't found my peace. I'm still looking for it. And you found it in this kind of humble existence, but I'm jealous. You're so happy. You've found what we all are looking for in life." And that's kind of what you're talking about here.
Phil, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think you've seen some of the things, like when I went into different aspects of my fishing, like my bass fishing, freshwater bass fishing, it was very competitive because a lot of the San Diego skippers bass fished.
In fact, you said it's more competitive than trying to catch albacore, right?
Oh, it was cutthroat. You should see the Sansom brothers. The story is Don was telling us at a dinner one time when we were all up at Casitas. Danny would roll over, dying, knowing what Don was talking about. But I mean, some of these stories, and they're brothers, but they're so competitive. And even back then, I think it was $100 a fish for a fish over 10.
Oh, shoot.
Back then.
Yeah.
Which was a lot. And Danny used to fly in these huge shiners from Florida. And I can remember, this is a funny story. I'm going to tell this. So anyway, Danny buys one of those portable pools, and he just got walls about that high, like aluminum, and it's framed up, right? And I don't know if you guys know Don, but Don's a big guy. So he comes over to see Danny's shiners that he brings in. He spent a ton of money on the pool, the pumps, these big shiners he flew in from Florida, for fishing the San Diego lakes because they could fish. They used to allow fishing shiners, and they probably still do, shiners down those lakes, right? Don comes over, slips, collapses this pool. The water in these shiners are flying out, going out into the gutters and washing down the street.
Oh my God.
He was telling us this at dinner in Ojai, and he was still married to Connie at the time, and Dave Williams, I fished with Dave Williams, but we were dying laughing.
I can only
And it was
imagine.
a
What a
story.
funny
So
story.
you talk about competitive, yeah, we were all very committed. It was a lot of the captains down there, so it was fun.
Did it ever
was
get
fun.
nasty?
No, it never got nasty. It was always fun. What? Okay, here's another one.
Please.
This is another Danny Sansom story, and I would talk to Danny because he'd call me from San Diego wanting to know what's going on at Casitas Castaic up north, and he would fill me in if something was going on in San Diego. And he used to fish with John Collins. I don't know if you know John, but John,
yeah.
John's one of the greatest fishermen
Great
I've ever
fisherman.
seen too.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal fisherman. And John's taught me a lot of different things. But they are fishing one day, and so I'm always the first in line because we get up there 2:00, have breakfast, in line before 3. So when I hit the water, bingo, I'm gone. I get the spots that I want. So Danny's behind me. They hit the water. We hit the water. We go off. We start fishing, and we catch fish on the spot. We start making different moves, and I'm noticing. I go, I haven't seen him. I just pull my binoculars out. I'm looking. I go, well, Danny's not going to go into a cove. He's going to fish one of the main points because that's where your current structure, the best current structure areas are at Castaic. But I don't see him. I said, that's weird. It's odd. So anyway, we go through the day. Well, about 3:00 in the afternoon, I see Danny's boat. And his was a Ranger, but no trolling motor, had a black bottom, and I see him running across the water. So I go chasing him down. And I'm going, where the heck were you? And John Collins is sitting next to Danny. He's just like, angry, not saying a thing. He's just fuming. I said, where'd you go? He goes, well, we didn't meter anything here. And so we pulled the boat out, drove up Highway 126 up to Casitas, dumped the boat at Casitas, metered all over Casitas, never saw a thing, pulled the boat out, came back to Castaic. And it was funny because a lot of us had different philosophies, but I told Dan, I said, I don't trust the meter for that. I trust the conditions, because a lot of times I'll meter on the spot, you don't see anything, and first cast you nail a fish, So I was never big on that particular, on that part of it, I fished it when the current was conducive for those particular spots. But yeah, that's the day that they broke up. Yeah. Their marriage,
really?
The marriage between Danny Sansom and John Collins broke up, but it was so funny to watch.
That's
them.
hilarious.
It was so funny to watch that, But John, oh my God, what a! And here's a good one. One time we're on the American Angler when Danny had the American Angler, because when I was with G. Loomis, we would charter the American Angler, and I go up with John, and I like fishing the bow. Well, I go up there, and there's just John up there, and I run back, I grab a bait, I pin it, and I fire it out. John goes up here and watch this. He takes the bare hook in the bow tank. He goes, hooks a bait, fires it out. And I mean, it hits the water and is, and I'm going, I'll be doggone.
Yeah, I remember guys doing that on the Redondo Special. It was funnier than heck.
I wind mine in. I do the same thing. I hang one, fire it out, bingo. John's such a great fisherman. I don't care whether you're lake fishing or fishing. He's just tremendous fisherman, So there's always things to be learned.
Absolutely.
Watch those guys. They're the good guys. They're there all the time, And I didn't have the long range time that John or Danny had, So all the more I should be watching. And that's true for all of you out there. The guy that watches and pays attention, eyes open, ears open, mouth shut. You're going to learn. That's going to help you learn a lot quicker.
Brandon says, what an awesome show. And he has to agree that passion fulfills everything in work-related jobs. Having a passion for what you do.
Then it's not work.
Yeah, right.
It's not. No.
It's
And you'll pursue it at a different level too. And that's what I do with my fishing.
Yep.
You know, I didn't settle for anything. I'd either tweak it, make it better, constantly looking for new knots, this, that. And there's no end to the learning. Not if you're looking, you know?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I know your show is a success already and going to continue to be a success because we've talked about it together and we think the same way about we don't get into stuff to just screw around or just, go through the motions. We both get into these things to surge ahead and get to the top.
You know,
and,
Phil,
and when you get to the top, you keep pushing.
You do. And you know something? Once again, here amongst all these legendary captains when we did that freedom trip a couple weeks ago. So, honestly, there's some pretty heavy pressure on us out there getting out there at tenor, right?
Yeah.
So we anchor up and these things are eating light line. So I'm going, well, light line. This hook's 350 milligrams with a ring, and I had it sized up a little bit. And I fire it out and I don't get bit. But it wasn't because of the hook. It's because I had too short of a top shot of fluoro and I didn't have mono. This is something that, I've been so spoiled with long range fishing and going down the Bay of LA, I've been fishing straight 60-pound Spectra on my light 9-foot rod. I can make a long cast and straight fluoro and get bit. Okay? Well, that's not happening. And I got to look. I got 29 captains and guys that been on boats all their lives, ran boats. They're fishing mono, and they're picking away at these 20-pounders, 20-something pounders, 3 pounds. And so I go, okay, well, let me go up in line. I have a little longer shot of mono, on my 25. So I do that, and I'm making several casts, and I don't get bit. I'm staying with the lighter hook, right? So, okay, great. The only thing I have with a lot of mono and fluorocarbon, and then way below I had Spectra backing, was my 30-pound. So I go, okay, well, it's got all mono all the way through for probably about 60 yards. So I have this in a bigger size, but it's still light ring because I haven't seen any big fish. These are all those 28, 25s, 30, maybe 30. But I've landed albacore and all that with that hook before. So I'm fishing I think it was like a 1/0 with the light ring. Fire it up, and I get bit first cast. Okay. And it kept going and going. I'm going, something's wrong with this fish. It's not stopping, And I got to tell you, I ended up hooking 6 fish that day. I ended up straightening the hook on one of these because this was not intended, folks, for 65 to 100-pound fish. And for some reason, I don't know what I was doing, but I went to a heavier hook after that, and I ended up straightening that out to on a Gorilla Light. And, it was a huge learning thing for me too, because here I was, I hooked 2 good fish, and I dumped them both, straightened both hooks out. So I finally went to a 4X in a 1/0, and with that 30-pound, and it had to have that mono shot on there, the mono to fluoro, because bluefin, folks, I'm positive it was looking at my Spectra, and when you're competing with 29 other captains, you got to start thinking quick. You got to make your adjustments faster. And as it turned out, I was just blessed. I never hooked a small fish. Unfortunately, it all tortured me. But I had one chew through. We had 2 gaffs ready to stick, and it chewed through the line. But then we got the other ones. But they're all nicer fish. But that processing that goes through your head, especially amongst a core of guys that are great fishermen, you have to, put that computer in super speed to get going. You got to really dial it in, but you have to do that processing fast, and you got to just keep trying. But that's what it took.
All right, tons of people watching, Danny, and lots of stuff, including Greg Silks. You know Greg?
Hey, Greg. Oh yes, Greg.
He says,
awesome.
Some say it's the catch, but the adventure always continues, and it keeps your heart young. That's what it does. Danny, 540 Slinger, that's Jeff Yeomans. Danny, I don't know if you've met Jeff. You may have. He's a super good guy, but he says one of the best parts about fishing is there's always something to learn to make you a better fisherman, which is exactly what you were just saying.
You know what? I've said if you can't learn something new every day, you're not looking hard enough, because there's something out there. There's something out there, and you compile those and store it away. At one point in your fishing career, you're going to be able to implement that in another form. I don't care if it's bass fishing, trout fishing, whatever, but that format or that processing and the way you're thinking is going to help you. But you can't say that's not going to work, because you have to try it,
Brandon wants to know, do you think pinhead jobs will ever come back? Where do you see this business headed to in the future?
That's going to be a tough one, and that's a legal issue. But you know what? That is where you absolutely got your greatest captains from, the kids that grew up. And I got to tell you, my last pinhead, Brian Kirihara.
There you go.
Okay.
Doesn't get any better than that.
They don't get any better than
No.
that. And Brian would call me up to the well house and say, Danny, what do you think about this, this, and this? And I would just say, Brian, you see all this stuff up here in the American Angler? That never existed when I was around. I don't know anything. You're the best at it. You've taken it and taken the ball and put it into a different zone with your operation, But that's because they don't stop. He's got that same mindset. He's got that same fishing mindset, and work ethic. And he would put so much pressure on himself. I finally told Brian, let Ray run the boat. You put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
And now look, you got two of them that are the same, that are both killers.
Yeah.
Between Ray and Brian, and they're phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Steve Bermudez, remember he was bored down in Ensenada, Baja California. He's no longer bored, and he has a question. For us amateur rod builders, have you done an instructional video? Sounds like you and I are going to be doing one here on how to build a rod using the Semper handles, what fastens the handle to the rod, and what type of rod is best for the handle.
Now, funny you should say that. Okay, I did bring him in just for that question, okay?
Boy, Steve, I'll tell you what, you're clairvoyant.
This happens to be our jig handle for our 9-foot jig sticks, okay? It's one piece. You can't crush this if you run over it with a car. It's phenomenal. Does not, okay, here. This is why I brought this.
We got a scale.
Okay. It's 4.15 ounces for this handle.
That is amazing.
Okay. But it's not just the strength and weight. This thing literally will structure the rod. Okay. That's where this, it's tremendous. So I could take my jig stick. Okay. Okay. If you put it all the way to the butt, okay, so you got a 9-foot jig stick now, okay? Like this. I'm going to move in so you can see that, okay? But here's the beauty of this thing, okay? When I designed this jig stick, it was for throwing Patty 45 lights, okay? And I've caught some big bluefin on it, over 100-pound bluefin, bait fishing with this, too, in this configuration. But what's really cool is, say you're a 7X guy, and the 7Xs are a little heavier. What you do is and this is touchy, and I would take it off a little bit at a time. Take a little bit off the tip, okay? And it would give it a little more juice. And all you got to do is tape it forward a little bit, okay? You could actually make this a 10-foot jig stick by just bringing it up, putting your masking tape here and epoxying it, and so the butt end will come up to about here. So now you got a 10-footer.
Wow.
You can truly customize it.
That is so cool.
It's the only time that's ever been done, Phil.
Yeah.
And the shut off is based on wherever this is right here. Okay, so if you want to shut the rod off faster, you bring it up. You want to slow it down, get the length and extension on it, you could put it back further. Bring it forward further. And if you want to fish at a heavier line, you take and don't do it by a lot, but in small increments, take it off the tip, and that will stiffen the rod. So if you're throwing a heavier surface iron jig, you take a little bit off at a time. For like I said, if I was throwing a 7X instead of a 45, I would take it off starting like a half an inch at a time. But if you want to get back the length, all you got to do is bring this forward Put your sections of masking tape here, here, and here. Okay. Epoxy it up. And now you got that extension. You got a 10-foot rod. Okay. That's never been done before, folks. And to truly customize that jig stick for a specific jig, now you're talking. But you're not talking in layman's terms. You're talking in an expert or somebody that's doing specialty stuff. So you'll have to know your weights on your jigs. It's probably going to take you time where you might be able to just push this in, take your masking tape, slide it in temporarily, put a couple guides on it, fire it out to see if it's going to handle it before you build it up and before you epoxy this section in. So you know exactly how far you want to make it, But you have that capability of making this 9-footer into a 10-footer very easily. And it's structured all the same. Now keep in mind, the more you bring the shutoff, which is now here, okay, at the end of the handle, the shutoff right here, the more you bring that up, the faster it's going to shut off. And Phil, you and I talked about it with that 30-pound stick that I used on our tuna trip, Now, when I brought that rod out, I was not intending to use it on, and I didn't know that it were going to be fish that size, okay? And this is it right here, okay? And it's the custom rod builders, the guys that are really sharp, that get it, you'll understand what I'm talking about, okay? This rod, I think it's 12 ounces, so it's super light, okay? If I were to take this foregrip and either order a longer foregrip like we have them in different lengths, but say go to a 14 instead of a 12-inch, okay? You see the difference in length, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can see it from there, Phil, our viewers can see
yeah.
it. Okay. Instead of this being a 30-pound stick, it's probably going to be like a 40-pound stick. And a lot of these guys, I have doubting people that say, I won't do that. It will. Trust me. And it's not going to be for everybody. You have to have this understanding. You have to have the mentality for that to do this. But to fish a lighter rod, which means the recovery rate's faster, it's going to recoil quicker because it's lighter. Being light, it wants to dampen. If you have the same rod made out of fiberglass, you put a bend in it, but by the time it recoils, it's got to recover its own weight, which is six times heavier than graphite. It's got to recover its own weight before it do any lifting on the fish. So Phil will tell you, he was standing next to me filming. I had it on the rail right here at that angle almost all the time. Now, you'll never break it because this basically, if you're holding it down here at 30 degrees, you're getting probably about 60 pounds of pressure. Well, it's unbelievable. You'll never break the rod, number one, when you're putting max pressure on it. So if you have it under your arm and on the rail, you're going to kill it. The minute you start going above 90, your power drops off tremendously.
No high sticking.
Yeah.
Right.
And high stick, here's the thing. With the 30-pound rod that we did the study on years ago, at 60 degrees, it was a 7-foot 30. This is a little longer, but it took 62 pounds of pressure to break. Well, you're not going to break a rod. 62 pounds is crazy, especially if you're fishing 30-pound line, right? Okay, so you got 62 pounds of pressure angled down here. So you're pointing the fish. Isn't that a lot like what these guys are doing with a slow pitch? They got a soft tip, and you throw it. It's got a nice action to get bit on, but when it comes to fighting a fish, that tip collapses, and you're pointing it. I'm watching these guys doing this. Well, okay, you do the same thing. Phil saw me doing it on the Freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? So this thing is, because it's light, it's going to recover way faster than glass or any other rod. Okay, because it's graphite. Okay. Now, if I go to 45 degrees, instead of 62 pounds of pressure, it's going to have about 45 pounds of pressure at 45. At 90, it drops off to 30 pounds. So you got about half the pressure you have straight out than down here. So why would I be out here? So you kind of want to always keep it down so you're in that a bigger power range. The minute you start going up here, you drop off at what is that, 120? I think it goes to, I think it's 12 pounds. Then up at 150, it goes to like 9 pounds. And then when you're high sticking, it's like 6.2. So you got 1/10 the pressure at a high stick. And that's also where you're going to blow up the tip.
Yeah, it's going to break.
So you got 1/10 the pressure. Why in the world would you high stick? You got no business like. So if you don't know how to, if you don't grasp that, please don't use graphite. Go use a fiberglass rod. You're safe there. You won't be safe with this because that's not what it's built for. This rod is built for putting a fish on fast and quick. And as Phil saw, I mean, unfortunately for me, I never hung a small fish. I got tortured the whole time, but the rod and the reel had the capability, and I was fortunate enough that I was fishing a 500 accurate with 30 pound with a 2-speed. So, for us old guys, this button here, buddy, that's my buddy. That's my buddy. This little button here, it saved me. Makes you look a little good, and then it fly lines bait's phenomenal too. So. Was out there in the zone and passed everybody a little bit, with it too. So it's a performance rod, but that's part of the characteristic of having that lighter rod is getting that cast too. So, but it all works hand in hand together.
Great stuff. Brandon says he was on a trip on the Amigo. He had limits of bluefin. In fact, he was kicking butt. He says a lot of what you're talking about is exactly what he was doing. Danny is the man. Steve Bermuda says that's what my wife keeps telling me. I'm not sure what he's talking about. He's the boring guy. Maybe his wife's telling him he's boring. Yeah, Steve, you are a little boring sometimes. Hoo-yah. And it can be ran over by a truck. I'm buying that. What brand is it, Phil? Who makes it? This guy makes it.
It's a Semperfish. Yeah,
right here. Yeah. MJM. Go ahead.
No, Phil, over the years, gravitated, we started out when we were kids with fiberglass and everything, gravitated, and then started playing with some of the first graphites, as I was in college and stuff. And then I was fortunate enough to be around guys that were in the industry and got involved, Vic Cutter and Dave Myers and those guys down at Fenwick when they were booming everything down in Huntington Beach. I fished a lot of prototype graphite, but there were a lot of different companies that were playing with graphite at that time too. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank, but there's several of the guys that fish with us, but since understanding it, and when I got off the boat too, one of the first things I did was I was the rep for G. Loomis, and I got Gary into making, we had composites, but I got him to make a straight graphite series. And once again, it's just like this, it's not for the faint of heart, but if you know what you're doing, you're going to put on more fish, Yeah, if you high stick it, it'll blow, but that's shame on you, You're not, you shouldn't be fishing that rod. You should be fishing a composite or a fiberglass rod, if you're doing that. It's just telling me that you're not understanding the power curve and where, what type of pressures you're getting at these different angles, And even more so now with Spectra because there's less, you don't have the elongation in the line that you do with monofilaments. So, it's even more touchy and more imperative to keep that rod angled down. You take the max pressure out of it and you're getting a faster recoil off the blank, keeping that angle down.
Hey, everybody, hit that like button. Let Danny know how much you're enjoying the show. As I am sitting here, I learned so much all the time. Mark says, hey, Phil and Danny, great show as always. Where can I buy Semperfish products in Southern California? Very interested in learning about the lineup and supporting. Thank you, guys.
Well, I appreciate that. You can call us at Semperfish. We have a couple people out. We have one in the valley, Sal Valone at Bob Sands. Johnny's up in Pasadena. We have Jason down at Bob's Fishing Tackle in Norwalk. And then you can call the guys at LA Harbor, or LA Bait and Tackle too in San Pedro.
And you have an Instagram also, right?
Fishing
Semperfish?
Alliance, excuse me, yes. And on Instagram, you can get stuff if they don't have it available. We do have that. We have the blanks available. The handles are coming, but the blanks are in stock right now.
Brandon says he's buying these things as soon as they are available. He's
You got
loving
it.
the show
Keep you,
tonight.
and we'll keep you posted on the handle production too. That's all coming in, and fortunately, that's made not too far away from here, so we'll have control of that too. That.
Tony Gonzalez says, Phil, Danny is a great addition to the channel. Absolutely, man. I don't ask people to be on the channel who are not fantastic. And Danny's at the top of the list. Tony has an additional comment. I think this is the first time I have been at the landing for a show. Let's see how late we can keep Janelle up there. Janelle's out front. Hey, well, Danny and I are planning. I don't know about Danny. Danny said yes. So, Gail, if you're listening, you may not see Danny for a little while. We're going to run over, I think, at least I am for sure, over to the Redondo Beach Rod and Reel Club this evening. Chuck Zimmer invited us to come over, and he said he's got plenty of food. Any of you out there, you can Google the Redondo Beach Rod and Reel Club, and I'm guessing Danny and I will be there about 8:30. 8:30ish. They go till 10. So we're probably going to go till 7:30, maybe a little later here. Who knows? I know you guys want us to go till midnight, but Janelle will kill us, and so will Chuck Zimmer. So that's great. I think Tony Gonzalez is the Tony Gonzalez who works up front. There's two Tony Gonzalez.
I know of one that used to. It was the president of Eastside Rod and Reel many years ago.
Oh yeah, there you
Tony
go.
Gonzalez
Another
there,
one,
too.
right?
Yeah.
Pando
Quite a few.
56, Semperfish, able to go with deckhand configuration or must use a reel seat?
No. As you could see with this 30-pound stick, we have a real seat on there too. So you could configure it any way you want. And that's the beauty of this. It's a very modular deal, but the beauty is the performance, the lightweight, and the way that the handle structures the shutoff. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that because it didn't exist. It now exists, and you guys can be the first ones to do that. I mean, there's shops out there that don't understand this concept, but it's going to change the way you could take that 30-pound blank and make it a 40-pound rod by bringing it up a little bit because it shuts the rod off further up. So it's bringing more power. I designed the blanks for fishing a standard length hand foregrip, but again, by adapting it with a longer foregrip, you could easily change it. If I wanted to make a softer rod, you bring it back 1.5 inches or so, and now you got a 25-pound rod because you got more flex ahead of your handle. So it's brought a different concept into fishing that we've never had. So you guys as anglers, you're staying ahead of the rest of the curve, and a lot of shops don't understand this shit. It's a new concept, and but the way you can design and get exactly the pressure you want off your rod and for a specific use, it's unrivaled at this point.
Steve Bermudez, will Semperfish be at the upcoming fishing shows? You and I were talking about that.
We've been talking about that too, and it's been so tough. See, I did the Fred Hall show a couple years ago. Then we went to Pacific Coast. We're still having a difficult time getting components because we have put all our eggs in our basket in one place in the world, and they've been in a shutdown for a long time. Pending that, and if we can get the guys, I can't wait. If you could source them, we'll have. Pretty sure that the handles are going to be ready to go pretty soon. I think we've been running several batches of them, so that's a big part of it. It's a whole new concept. The way you can, like I say, build it up with tape, epoxy it in three or four different spots. It's simple and it's strong. You can run over that with a truck. It's not going to crush. It's unreal.
So whether Semperfish is there or not, I can guarantee you this, that Dan and I will be wandering around at sometimes, and we'll announce to you. We'll be doing some live podcasts together.
Sure.
We'll be doing the Danny Kadota show from there and the Freedman Adventure
We'll have
show.
fun. Yeah.
We'll definitely be there. We'll let all the fans out there know when and where.
And it was a great show. I mean, I did it. We did it for the first time last year. Bill was terrific.
Yes.
I think the greatest part was I was able to take my 2-year-old granddaughter over the trout pond, and I know I got my fishing partner in the future, because after 5 fish, I had to drag her off the pond.
Oh my God, that's such a good feeling.
2 years. Oh, Gia just would not. Yeah, unbelievable. She's my fishing buddy. Kind of like how my grandmother and grandfather had me when I was 4. Yeah.
God, I tell you, Danny, and here we go. Here I go again, getting off into a life lesson. But I don't know what this generation that has been staring into a screen for most of their lives. I don't think we realize none of us realize what's going to happen in the more you can hook a kid on the outdoors
Oh.
or getting away from phones or getting away from social media.
Yeah.
I think the better off mentally
absolutely.
and psychologically and everything else they're going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gail Kadota. Yeah, I know Gail. She said, DM Danny at Semperfish Rods for blanks. Gail says about the Redondo Beach Rod and Reel Club tonight. Take him, Phil. Take him, please.
Get
Take
him
him.
The boot.
Brandon says, Danny, has this item been tested on suicide wrap? I call it suicide wrap because of the wrap where the guide's all twisted.
Goes
It
around.
means acid wrap.
Acid wrap, yeah.
Curious if your company has tested it in that fashion.
No, but it'll work. It'll work. The blank's
Why
a
wouldn't it,
blank.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll work. That was the other things. I've never, I've seen it done. The only time I ever fished it, I was fishing a muskie up in Washington with it, and it was casting. It was okay. It was just different. I'm just very old school. You're just comfortable fishing the way I have. But if the acid wrap is done right, it's not a problem. I'm just not comfortable with it because I'm old school.
Yeah, you say that though, but you're very likely to change. I mean,
I've
change
tried it
all the time. So,
like I said,
I
I've
don't
tried
know
it.
that it's so much that you're old school is that you're not sold on it, maybe, right? Because
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
change to all kinds.
If
of
it
different
works.
stuff. Yeah, right.
If it works. I just, the thing about the acid wrap is the way it's spined. It will always torque over that way.
Yeah.
Where it's more work to put it on spine. To get it aligned just right. Your wraps have to be just so. Your spacing has to be just so. The acid wrap, there's a little more play in it where you can get away with stuff. Like I said, the only time I fished it was fishing a muskie. Fishing muskies up there, throwing lures and stuff, and it was fine. It worked fine. But I don't know. That's going to be a tough one because I'm just old school about certain things. I'm comfortable with what we're doing and the mindset that we've always had here in Southern Cal. I know you're seeing it here and there, but when in Rome, and this is Rome to me, so much was developed, and I didn't see that till I went up into the Northwest. But I could. It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon asked, and I don't think I asked you this question or we didn't answer. What is the future of sport fishing? Do you think, as you look 20 years down the line or 40 years down the line, does this still exist? Is anybody going to build new sport boats anymore, or are they too expensive to build?
They're very expensive to build. It's
Right.
getting worse.
Right.
And the compliancy on the engines. Well, the thing about that though, and I got to say, from what I gather, is that some of that gets subsidized too, which helps the boat owners. Because it's a tough life for those guys, and it was tough for us, and so we had to make sure that we had to watch everything to make money. But then again, when we started out, fuel was 17 cents. I mean, it was a lot different. It was a lot different, I had a friend at the fuel dock that the tugs would order thousands of gallons and they'd fill up and they'd have like 1,200 gallons that they weren't even going to use. He said, come over and top off. And I couldn't even put that much in,
Yeah.
But, the fuel was nothing back then, But, the expenses now, boy, what a difference. But then the improvement in the engines, the different tiers now, the diesels, the efficiency. It's hard to say. There's a lot of
Really
toss-up
is.
right now
Really
between
is.
guys saying whether they're going to go out in a private boat. And a lot of these guys are going on these little 4-packs and stuff, running out for the day and stuff. And I get that too. I enjoy going down below and enjoying the crowd and the whole deal with having dinner with all these guys for so many days. And, you have
The
a
camaraderie
network
of it
and a
all.
camaraderie. Yeah. And that's a good thing. I look forward to seeing all the guys on my trips every year,
Yeah.
that I see year after year. It's awesome, to me. That's been the biggest part.
Here's your chance to ask Danny Kadota a question. Please do hit that like button, that thumbs up. We really appreciate it if you can do that. Pando56. All right, back to the mono, Danny. Top shot for bluefin tuna. I was using clear mono one trip ago, and I was doing okay. The hot stick on the boat, however, told me to use blue mono. Colored mono is less visible than clear. Is that true?
Okay, I use Blue Iser, and I have from pretty much day one. But here's something. I don't know if many of you guys are bass fishermen, but if you guys know who Doug Hannon is. They called him the Bass Professor. With Doug, I would talk to Doug quite a bit, and I got to tell you something. In those years when I was freshwater bass fishing, he taught me something that was invaluable, and I proved it to myself. What it was I was using clear Trilene XT because the XT had the least amount of stretch of any of those freshwater lines at the time. So when you stuck it, you're using these light 92 158 mustads, and I'd sharpen the hooks every night. I'd sharpen a box every night, just to have them on board. But when I went into a pool next door, and Doug, this is Doug's deal. You take the hook, string it up, bring it back to the reel. So if you got a 6-foot rod, you're going to have about 10 feet of line that comes up and back, okay? And so you pinch the line together with clear mono. You take a green marks a lot. And in gradients of about 2.5, 3 inches, you just do green, clear, green, clear all the way to that. Now, essentially what you've done is you've marked about 10 feet of line, okay? So that was adequate. So what I did, I hopped in a pool next door at my neighbor's house, right? I looked at the clear line, and sure enough, you could see the light transferring all the way up. When I hopped in the pool with the marked line, it disappeared. And what it did is it kept the light from transferring down the monofilament, and it broke it up. And that was one of my key things that I think made a big difference when I was chasing those big bass at Castaic and Casitas. I was a firm believer in it. I didn't change anything at that point. I was using that XT because it had the least amount of stretch. Now, I used Iser for everything else on the ocean. But, like on our trip, I was using Blue Iser, But, on that clear line on the lakes, it sure made a difference. And, I don't know what, I think the proof's in the pudding. I get a lot more bites. But that was something that I thought it made sense. But I went down in the water to see it myself, where you don't have the beam of light transferring down that straight clear mono, and it was broken up with the green marks a lot slots. It stopped it. You didn't see that line transfer of light. It wasn't the line. You saw the light transferring down.
Man, that is awesome. You go to the extremes to figure this all out.
Well, those things, I think that, Phil, I think you saw it in that room. It made a difference on those bigger fish.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Brandon says he's going to buy those handles for his glass rods. This is truly an ingenious idea. Fish guy. Love the show, Danny. One of my favorite things about fishing is you get out of it what you put into it.
That's it. The more you dig, the more you, like I just gave you a key on the camouflage in the line. That came from the Bass Professor himself, Doug Hannon, And
very good.
So there's things that.
Let me ask you your next. We're doing a podcast here, but yeah, if you go right up to the front there, okay. You can they can help you. Go one more up a little bit further, and they'll help you out. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
They going fishing?
I don't know.
They have rods in their hands?
Very nice people, though.
Cool.
All right, we leave our door open here, by the way, because we like everybody to come in and say hi. Fish Guy says, love the show, Danny. One of my favorite things about fishing is you get out of it what you put into it.
You know something?
Truer words were never spoken.
Homework. Whether I was running a boat, it was the calls I was making to other captains, trying to figure stuff out, figuring out currents, conditions, temperatures, temperature breaks, this, that, whatever, and a good network. You know, and I got to tell you, I credit all my friends. My friends were a huge part of it. You know, I had a great nucleus. I was telling you, like from the sports side, you know, I had like the Sansums and yeah, I got Taka, you know, but there's guys like Corky Yokoi is, you know, a good friend that I would talk to all the time. And we just had a number of guys that we communicated with. Glenn Murakami, my fishing partner on Friday. But, you know, we all kept in touch with what was going on with the lakes. So you knew what was going on in Casitas at the same time was going on at Castaic. And same thing, it's the information. It's your information that you get. But in working with these friends all these years, you know, I credit them with that. Corky was the reason why and you know his son Kyle.
Yeah.
You know, and it was thanks to Corky taking Kyle on his Christmas break, which is incidentally at this time of year that in 1989 he took Kyle up to Castaic, and there's a transition in the fall. Those big fish are feeding up on shad. They get a lot of fat from the shad, and they feed up for the wintertime. But when the big fish start getting ready to spawn, and those big trophy fish spawned long before a lot of the smaller fish, when they switch diets and they go on that crawdad diet, that's when we got excited. And it just so happened, Corky went up during Christmas break when Kyle was out of school. I think he was in high school. And they went up there and they whacked some fish on the crawdads. And this is when you're starting to get these 6 to 10 pounders, stuff like nice fish. And that's when it's time, bro. Corky went up there during his Christmas break, and he and Kyle whacked some fish and called me. And so we called Taka, and I took Marty, who was one of my seconds, is Taka's oldest son. And Taka took another friend, Calvin. And it's just so happened on January 7th, I-5 was closed. Snow at the Grapevine. So it was completely shut down. So, you know, again, you got to do your homework. Called the mini mart. I said, is Parker Road open? Yeah. Oh, so I could sneak in the back way. So I called the, you know, he said, is the lake open? He says, I don't know. Call the lake. Call the lake. Yeah, we'll be open tomorrow. I said, oh, great. So we got up there. We were the only 2 bass boats on the lake.
Oh,
imagine
my God.
that.
Had the whole thing to yourself.
So pressure has something to do with it,
Sure.
too. People don't understand that. The pressure has something to do with it. Timing has something to do with it. So we went up there, and it was freezing. It was in the 30s. But, you know, if you read every bass book, those bass don't bite in, you know, when it's that cold. Well, they do. Fish do what they want to do.
Kind of like these bluefin right now in the cold water.
Yeah. So again, it's a great analogy. You don't know till you get out there, you know. And so, but we knew from Corky that they're eating the crawdads, and that Mother Nature tells you that, okay? When they're eating the crawdads, they're getting ready to spawn because the eggs, they need that calcium and cholesterol from the crawdad for the egg development. So that's what's telling us it's time. So we get up, first spot we hit, I stick a fish, the rod tip stops and it walks, and it unbuttoned. And I looked at Marty, I said, that was a good one.
When it walks, you can tell it's a bigger
Very
fish,
slow,
right?
too.
Yeah.
Some of those 10 to 12 pound fish fight harder than these real big fish.
Like the 15 and above?
Yeah. They'll lumber, and they've got the weight to break you off,
Yeah.
but they're not taking off like a small fish. I mean, just think about a small bluefin or yellowfin. Hey, they'll peel line like crazy, you know. Those bigger ones is just steady walking away from you, you know. But it was the same analogy anyway. I hooked one and dumped one the first stop we made, but we had some nice fish. And met up with Talk about noon, and he had a little bit better day going. He had a few more fish than we did, but there's all that quality fish. And so lake closed at about 3 o'clock. So we ran back to the spot where I dumped the fish. There's a tree on a high spot out in the middle of a cove. It's out in the middle. So, you know, you do need electronics, and you have to sit yourself on it correctly, you know, with respect to the current. And so Marty made a cast down the left side of the tree. I went down the right side of the tree. He gets bit immediately. He gets an 8-pounder, nice fish. I run back there, net it, throw it in the boat, walk back to the bow, pick up my rod, and the crawdads they have a panic thump, you know. And
Kind of like when you feel a sardine start flipping out.
Exactly. They're telling you, hey, get me out of here. You know?
Exactly.
And all of a sudden it goes thump. I stick it, and it just had this
Starts
slow,
walking.
the rod tip's doing this. I go, Marty, I think this is a good one, you know. So I have to lean on it because it's kind of going right at the tree. It veers off to the right, starts going under my bow. I'm in the bow. It goes under my anchor line in the bow, and it starts coming up right under the boat. It's not even 2 minutes, maybe, right? It starts coming straight up in the boat, and I said, Marty, you better get the net. Gets the net and nets it, and I can't see it because he's back by the stern. He goes, oh, blank. And I go, what is it, a catfish? He goes, no. And then I looked at it, and I repeated the same word, which I won't say. But and that was in 1904.
Wow. Giant
So
fish.
you don't know. But again, 2 bass boats on all of Castaic. So pressure, the fish are to some extent are pressure sensitive too, you know. But you never know. You never know. When I got that 18 3/4, I would have fished that spot that I was on and gone by that time. But we had a breakdown. We were in my friend's boat, and his steering was frozen. So we had to pull the boat out of the water, take it down to Castaic, get it knocked loose,
Oh my God.
re-greased, you know, and he had it all serviced, but, you know, he lives by the ocean, and so the salt air got to it. And meanwhile, I'm grumbling because we missed out on the position alpha.
Yeah.
We get up to the lake, it's like 9 o'clock, and I'm kind of grumbling.
Yeah, it's over with.
And first cast on that one was an 18 3/4.
Oh my God.
So, you know, I wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have been gone by that time if we had hit that spot early, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes you just don't
Just
know.
never
I mean,
know.
you could put together patterns and you could put together some pretty good guesstimates, but you know, fish have fins. They move.
That's right.
You know, but you know, there's some concepts that are consistent, and there's some places you can go to that's a little more consistent than others. So.
A fantastic guy that I know you love, Darren Dohe.
Darren,
Hey, Danny.
the man.
Can the handle tube be used to repair a crushed jig stick also? Or are the tubes going to be available in different inner diameters?
You know, you know what? You can. Are you talking about by the butt section crushed? Because what it is you can cut it and extend it. I said, you know, it is solid and you can't crush the tube itself, but you do need enough to, you know, put a couple sections of masking tape and then epoxy them. But I can easily see a foot or maybe even a little bit more back behind where the butt of the rod is. If you wanted to take like a 9-foot blank and extend it out and make it a 10-footer, yeah, easily, you know. And then I was saying earlier too, it'll truly allow you to customize the rod, because if you're throwing a 7X, you want to throw in a little heavier surface iron, you could take a little off the tip, but I would do it a little bit at a time. So, you know, that's going to take a little figuring out to get that dialed in, but it gives you that option where you could trim it out so it fishes a 45 or a 7X, if, you know, or heavier, whatever jig, but you'll have to do it in testing that, you know, so it's trial and error, but it allows you to make a 10-foot rod out of a 9-foot jig stick.
Which is
That's
awesome.
a pretty cool concept.
Heck yeah. Fish guy. Danny, did you ever fish Lake Paris when Maurice Holby, that made working girl worms, held the world record for spotted bass? That ring a bell with you?
Hollaby, no, but I'm going to tell you a guy that owned every IGFA spotted bass record, because he used to fish with me on the Mustang. It was Gil Rowe. He was also a famous rod wrapper. He was in Dale Clemens' book on rod wrapping. But he's a tremendous, it still is today, although Gil's doing a lot of fly fishing. But Gil used to fish with my group from San Bernardino. And Gil, phenomenal guy. He was on my pro staff, you know, when I had G Loomis. And he would call me when those Paris fish were biting. You know what the problem was? It was the same time that Casitas and Castaic were going off.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I should have gone down there. I would have, you know, had a shot at a record Paris. I gave him all the credit in the world. He took every line class record, and he caught them from shore. He caught them all from shore.
Jeez.
Well, he's a phenomenal fisherman.
Yeah.
He's another one of those guys. We're very blessed to be around a nucleus of fishermen like that have that mentality, you know. But yeah, no, that was Paris. He got him on crawdads, and I think there are times he took small mudsuckers and things like that. But he got them all from shore, walking the shore.
Wow.
So even hats off even more to him, you know. But yeah, that Paris bite, would always go off at the same time as the casitas and cast steak bite. So I was into my largemouth. I was chasing that 20-pounder, you know. But, you know, I should have gone down to Paris with them because I would have had a real good shot at a nice, or, you know, nice trophy Paris, you know, spotty.
Hit that thumbs up, everybody. Tons of questions. I don't know if we're going to get out of here to make it to the Redondo Rod and Reel Club. We're going to do our
Heaven
best.
forbid.
Ned Nakatasuka. Are the semperfish blanks similar to the defunct Shikari line?
No, these are straight graphite. These are straight graphite. They're not composite. The actions are dialed into what I want. There's some actions that I wasn't happy with, you know, and we're tweaking those, you know. But no, they're straight graphite. They're as we smoke test them. We did a heck of a smoke testing on even some of the lighter stuff like this 30-pound blanket.
Yeah.
So you know the capacity to fish these bigger fish on these straight graphites. So let me just preface it like this. When I brought straight graphites in with G. Loomis, it was a tough sale for a lot of the tackle shops and everything else. And the biggest part of it is you don't know who that consumer is. It has to, you know, to be able to fish a straight graphite, you have to know how to fish. You have to know the rod angles, like I'm telling you. You have to know how to pull on fish. If you're a high sticker or something like that, you know, I'll be honest. If I know that somebody's high sticking them, I'm not going to warranty them. I'm going to say, you know what? Tell them this from day one. If you high stick, do not use my rods. These are performance pieces. I mean, it's like telling a guy that buys a Ferrari, yeah, it's not good for hauling a trailer home, you know, but the guy wants to trailer it. So if you eat a transmission, guess what? Shame on you.
Right.
You know, I mean, but it's the same mentality. You know, it's a high performance rod, and that's what it's for. It's for hooking a fish, fighting a fish, and landing a fish. You know, and yeah, are you going to pry doors open with it? No, not too well. You know.
Danny, we've been going for an hour and a half. It literally feels like 10 minutes to
Holy
me.
smokes.
It's been going along here. It's good. Brandon wants to know, is it a myth or is it true that Andy Pink is the best line you can fish albacore with?
You know, I fished that when I was on the Mustang a little bit, but you know, I've been fishing straight. I think it's all personal, to be honest with you. I've been fishing Iser Blue from day one, and let me give you a story on that. Okay, Russ Iser had a boat right here too. You know, he had the piece before he did the first string. You know. The Indian, he had a lot of boats. Phenomenal guy. He was one of my big mentors. But as old as he was never set in his ways. He kept tweaking things and kept searching for better things. He's our father of Spectra, people. Let me tell you how smart this guy is and how good he is and how he didn't let his ego bother him. So this is a true story. You remember his original line, Iser line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Well, he used to charter my boat. He had his own boats. Why would he charter the Mustang? He was just a good guy.
Yeah.
So Duntley and his whole gang would come out on the Mustang. We had some phenomenal trips. But I remember this one trip, and I'm fishing a short bass rod, because in Ambassadors, goofing around at Catalina, he brings out long rods. He was way ahead of his time with all kinds of stuff, fishing the long rods. So he says, here, try this rod and reel out. You know, so I fired out there. He's got 15-pound Iser line, his original line. I fired out there, stick about a 4.5 pound bass, and I bring it in, I start to bounce it, and the line snaps. And I say, Russ, this line is crap. And he goes, what are you talking about? It breaks right at 15 pounds. I said, you know what? The consumer can care less if it breaks at 15 pounds. The consumer wants to go down to San Diego with 15-pound line, get a 20-pound bluefin with it, and he's got bragging rights. He doesn't know that 15-pound breaks at 22. Well, he went to a copolymer, and he had the Iser Blues, and you know.
Based on your advice?
He changed it immediately.
Wow.
Well, because I made a stick. I said, this line is crap. I said, Russ, 99.9% of the guys are not worried about IGFA records, you know? And that's what he had it based on. His 15 broke at 15. I said, forget it, man. So his, now it's like 22. And guess what? That's all I've ever used. I have some of his original prototype first string, that he got extruded, from that new company. I won't mention the company, but much greater line. It's a copolymer, but overall, it won't break. And I've been using that from day one. I used it on our trip, and that's got to be 20-something years old.
Yeah,
and
right.
It hasn't broken down.
Oh my God!
And it was almost big fish.
That's amazing.
So no, it's amazing. It's
MJM Pando wants to know, what about 200-pound leader pink in the water? Do you think that makes a difference?
I don't think it makes a difference unless you're fishing at night or night or day. I told you with mono, I used to use the gradients with the marks a lot to break up the transfer of light going down. But a lot of those bigger fish are being caught at night, so I don't think it makes that much difference. You can always do that. It doesn't hurt it to mark it, and it'll stop that gradient of light from transferring down even at night, if it had that glare at night. But you're fishing down where there's virtually no light, especially on a night bite.
Greg Silk says, try putting a krill out pill on your hook above your bait. Killer, fresh or salt, stripers, and tuna love it.
Well, Greg, I give it to you. You're still hanging in there. That's a great idea. I've never done it, but since you said it, I'd be more than willing to try it.
You're going to give that a try?
Well, you know what? Greg knows his stuff. I've known Greg for many, many years. Tremendous fisherman, yeah. But yeah, no, I trust what he says. Yep.
All right, Isaac says, sorry, gentlemen, late to the show, and throws us a $20 bill. How do you like that, Danny?
Oh.
Thank you, Isaac. Danny and I
pay
appreciate
for your electricity here.
Hey, yeah, we pay for you and I can go out and have dinner tonight. Oh, wait a minute. Dinner's on the house over at the Rod and Reel Club.
There we go.
We'll use it for something. Our Mexico efforts. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
No worries. Let's see. All right. Let's see. No worries. We're on the topic of line configuration for fishes. And Isaac's a great guy. He loves to fish, and he's all about getting kids out fishing, including his own kids. But I see he takes other kids, and you're talking about your granddaughter and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
So important.
Oh, yeah. That's precious.
Yeah. Albert Ponce, a great guy, a dear friend of mine. He was just down in Mexico with an orphanage that went to blackfin sport fishing. We had such a great time. Albert, love you, love your family. Hey, Danny, have you ever put out a book, or have you thought about putting out a book on fishing because you are a sea of knowledge? Man, this guy's a poet and don't know it. I love it.
Not a book, but a video. But I did a lot. Here's the thing. Fishing being the love of my life, I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of research, And like anybody that wants to go into it very seriously, doing that homework and the research makes a huge difference. Because a lot of times it's those little tiny things that make all the difference in the fishing. And I gave you the examples of Doug Hannon showing me the marking of the line, camouflaging the line, and finding out by going in the pool itself is that it broke down that light gradient, transferring down that mono. Fortunate to be around a lot of great people. There's a friend named Joe Miller used to hang out at Taka's, and Joe was on us on a goof-off trip over at Guadalupe. Well, we got blown in, and we had to hide behind the island for so many days. From day one, for about 10 days, Joe was playing with knots, and he developed this Miller knot, which there was a time at the Long Beach show when they put it on the machine, that was the strongest knot ever, and I still utilize that, even for super light line, So you got all these fishermen here, great fishermen, that are constantly looking to improve things. And like I tell you, the tricks, I was telling you, like with John Lloyd, taking me up to the bow tank, taking the hook and going, taking the bait, and I go, what the heck? I go there, bank, same thing. It's watching these great fishermen and being blessed to be around all these guys. It's a matter of keeping your eyes open and watching and picking it up. It's there. You just have to have your eyes open to see it. And those that do their due diligence as far as homework, studying, testing on equipment and things like that, you benefit from that too, guaranteed. You stay on that leading edge of tackle, and that helps.
100%. Fish Guy, Bass Connection in Riverside was the tackle store that Maurice owned and ran. Danny, do the blanks incorporate a nano resin?
No, it's standard. It's standard resins. Yeah.
Pando 56 just gave us 20. We're up to $40. Pando,
Wow.
thank you so much. Danny and I
Thank you.
deeply appreciate it. It confirms in our mind that we're doing something right, Danny?
That's
Guys,
awesome.
Thank you
And
so much.
ask me anything. Honestly, if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. I'm not going to BS you. I don't believe in that.
Hey, we know that. I mean,
Yeah.
you are the best, and your knowledge is second to none. Isaac says, can you put on a video on how to properly use the rods? I don't think I'm a high sticker, but I'm not quite sure. You and I should do that. We'll do that.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
And you know what we could do is I'll get it set up to where we do have a scale, and that way I could prove to you what I'm telling you about the different angles, your lifting angles, and the pressure you get on it. What I tried to equate to, and a lot of you have seen these kids now fishing the flat falls, or the slow pitches, excuse me, right? And you watch them, and they're basically pointing the rod down. When they get bit, they're pointing the rod. And I watched the rods. A lot of them are real whippy, so the rods aren't going to give you much action, other than they're giving you that proper action for that flat fall to sink, right? You're getting that proper action, which allows you to get bit in a certain way. That's the attribute of that.
Yes.
As far as the structure, when it comes back to fish, to land the fish, there's nothing there because it's a noodle, okay? So what they're doing is, basically, if you watch them, they're pointing at the rod. Well, see, I advocate the same thing, not necessarily pointing, but holding it down, at that 30 degrees, because that's where you're going to get your maximum pressure. So if you're picking up line and actually just pulling back here and going down, if you got that head coming, this is what you have to understand, right? Is that if that head's coming, and if you're not doing this, which allows the fish to do this, every time it fluctuates and the head's down on a fish, and if it kicks, he's taking line on you. But if you're getting that short stroke with all that pressure, which you're getting at 30 degrees, you're getting 10 times the pressure you do if you high stick it. And if you're keeping the pressure on him at that angle and just getting that little bit, every time he's kicking and his head's pointed up, where's he going? He's kicking up at you. So it's just a matter of keeping up with the line there, and he's going to kick himself to the surface. That's how you compensate for, like, those bigger fish we had at Tanner,
Yes.
on the Freedom Trip.
Yes.
I would not get it fishing conventionally, having the rod up high. Those fish it'd have been done. And that's why you'll see it if you review that particular show on the Freedom, filmed all that. It was on the rail from here down, because I know that's where you're going to take the maximum lift out of the rod. And if you can't get that maximum lift, you can't keep their head coming up at you. And if that head is coming up, it's angled up, and he kicks, he's coming at you, and you just got to keep up with it.
Hey, Greg Silk says, oops, it was a krill oil pill. My bad. Sniper Gene, Danny, can you describe your ideal surface iron setup, rod, and reel? Thanks.
Over the years, I've played around with, I've had everything virtually, and that's why I went straight graphite. I went to straight graphite because it's all, to me, it's about getting the distance, getting the proper action. But, with each one of us now, and with this handle setup, the handle, you can make the adjustment to lengthen out that rod too, to do whatever you want. And I think, and we were just talking about it, if you're throwing a 7X, which is a little heavier than a 45, I would trim off a little bit, but just take a little bit off at a time and try it, because it's very sensitive when you start taking it off the tip. Okay. And, but I do know that with a Tatty 45, we took one of my original 40 jig sticks with that handle on it. And Joey had an old Pro Gear reel, and we took it, fired it directly into the wind, and it shot at 82 yards with a 45 light, which into the wind was amazing.
Wow.
Then I took it down to San Diego. I had Taro, Danny Wade, who's arguably probably one of the best jig fishermen around
Yep.
down there. Danny threw it too. So, we had some great fishermen there, right there
Yeah,
at
heck
the
yeah.
landing throwing that. But, you could tweak that to exactly what you want. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little practice. You may have to play around with a couple different tip sizes, and fire it at this length, or if you want to extend it out a few inches, cut here, cut there. But it's going to depend on your jig that you fish. It really is. I have this thing set for basically a 45 light. Okay, because Taddy Shimizu was an old friend. He and Billy, his son, would come around, and they bring just the fleet guys jigs here. And then when Jimmy took over, Jimmy and I were real good friends, and then we got his son Joey now, who's carrying on the family tradition.
Fantastic. He was
Yeah.
here on a show with
Yeah,
us.
Joey's
Great guy.
awesome, great kid. And I've actually, a lot of my antique stuff, Joey set up which I thought was really cool, like a mini museum up there at Taddy.
Oh, yeah.
He's got my real deals, with the original
Yeah.
two-speed in the box. It says the box, the two-speed, the real deal box, the whole deal. But there's a lot of stuff that I gave him that were basically collectible. But he's doing that because he's got a mini museum up there.
Oh,
which
that's cool. We got to go film that. And
Yeah,
do a
there
thing
you
on
go.
that. It's another.
There's a trip.
We're going to be
Another
busy.
show, man. You got it. You got it. But that's where the history, comes in.
No question. Brandon says he can envision doing bluefin tuna fishing at night while dropping hoop nets on the high spots out there on Tannerbank for lobster. That sounds like a tough one to me. I don't know about that. Did you ever, Fish Guy wants to know, Danny, did you ever fish with John Mitchell?
Mitchell, no, I did not.
He did not. All right.
Yeah.
Isaac says, could you do a whole fight scenario so we can see what you mean? We're going to have to videotape that. But
Oh, yeah,
what
yeah.
I would say, Isaac,
Well, you can go to the
the
Freedom
Legends
video,
video.
right? Yeah.
Right? Is that what you were going to say?
Yes.
Yeah, go to the Legends
yes.
video that we filmed because this guy was bit all the time. So he's a big part of that video. You could see exactly, Isaac, how he is fighting those fish. And Isaac goes on further to say, and he's talking about his son here, he says, I always tell Ethan to keep a bend in his rod, but now I'm not sure if I'm giving him the right advice.
You have to, it's determined by the fish. But, number one, as you get older, it's easier on you. And two, it's just putting more pressure on them. That angle. The minute you go over 90 degrees, your power drops off. So you don't want that because less power, you have less control of the fish. When you have it down here and you're just slow grinding and on those bigger fish, I had the button in on that thing. I had my low gear in. And if you're just whining and you're gaining line, every time he kicks, as long as you got that heavier, and you have more pressure when that angle's down here. The minute you start coming up, it drops off in pressure. So you have it down here, I have it in low, and I'm just grinding, keeping up with this thing as it's doing its circle, and it's going to circle right up because you're just keeping constant pressure. You got maximum pressure down at that angle. If you have 1/10 the pressure up here, that thing's going to get its head. The minute he puts his head down and kicks, he's taking line on you. So you're fighting yourself there. So it's a matter of just staying on it and getting a little bit and just keeping his head coming. Let him kick himself right to you. That's what you have to utilize. You have to utilize their power into being able to put that line back on your reel.
I think a lot of these guys are concerned that if they don't put a bend in the rod, they're going to lose the fish, but that's not true, right?
No. Listen, if you got mono, you're keeping a tremendous amount. You got plenty of flex in the mono itself. The whole thing when you're in that situation. Well, here's the thing. After I found out what size those fish were, on 30-pound, you just have to have that attitude. I'm going to either get them or I'm going to break them off because it's going to either saw you off. It's going to, like I did, I had 2 different hooks that I straightened out. So I'm maxing the pressure out on that.
Yeah.
I got chewed through on that one big, we had the 2 gaffs ready for it on that one. And that one chewed through the line, which, okay, I'm fishing 30, but you're talking, that was probably one of the biggest fish I hooked. you know, and we had the 2 gaffs out on that. And that's just the nature of, you got a tuna with teeth and you got 30-pound line, right? And then I unbuttoned one, which is the hook popped out. But you know, when you're fishing 30-pound, you're not generally targeting that 65 to 100-pound fish, right? That's not my first choice. It would have been so much easier to land if they would have eaten the 40 even.
Yeah, right.
If they went up 10 pounds, it would have been that much easier. But they wouldn't eat it. I tried getting bit on 40. I couldn't get bit on the 40. I don't think anybody did.
No, I don't.
You
I
know,
think
so,
it was all light
you know,
line.
if you can hang them on, it was a chore. Trust me. You know, but you know, you have to do what you got to do. You know, if they don't eat it, you got to go with what they can eat. And yeah, you're going to have your weaknesses are going to fail at that point. And you know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's you're really putting it through the smoke test.
Hey, folks, if you have any more questions, please ask us. Danny and I are getting ready to wrap it up. Although it seems like we've been only talking for 10 minutes, I feel like I don't want to wrap it
Yeah,
up.
you said we were at an hour and a half.
And we got to go to the Rod and Reel Club and go see some fans out there tonight. But we do have some more questions. So let's see. Fish Guy says, if you're high sticking, your rod will be shaped like the letter U instead of a 90-degree or less angle.
If you're high sticking, you're getting 1/10 of the pressure that you do if you're pointing the rod down at 30 degrees down here. Okay, that's your angle that you want. Okay, you're getting the maximum pressure is if you're pointing it right at the fishes, you're straight up and down. Okay, and that's if you watch the guys that are slow pitching nowadays, that's almost what they're doing. You've seen video of that. Okay, but you know, the graphite is going to recoil faster than glass. So, you know, whatever you get recoil off there, the whole thing is to just keep your handle turning. And at that point, I've got it in low, so every time it's kicking its tail, as long as you're keeping open, he's kicking right at you. So utilizes the fish's, you know, strength to land itself.
And Brandon says, I think Isaac is asking for an instructional video instead of the Legends video. Yeah, Brandon, we understand that totally. And as I said, we're going to do that in the future. We don't have one now. But for the time being, you might want to take a look at the Legends video until Danny and I have time to do that instructional video. But we got you.
Yeah.
We totally understand what you're talking about. Steve Bermudez, he's asking me, do I have a list of who's selling raffle tickets for the transportation of Baja clothing? So we started a raffle, everybody.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm selling them right now. We're going to get some other guys. These guys at the Redondo Beach Rod and Reel Club perhaps are. But if you want some raffle tickets, we can do it all by text. My number is 657-227-6459. Send me a text and I'll send you a bunch of information. We've had a tremendous response only 24 hours in. And the money that we raise is going to help to, I mean, Danny, you see out every time I turn around, there's more clothing coming in. That is so
awesome.
Which is fantastic.
That is, absolutely.
People in Mexico have no safety net. And what I say, and what my parents taught me, some people will say, well, you should help people here in America. And I get that. But when you help people across the border, man, does that say something about the generosity of the greatest country on the face of the earth.
Oh, absolutely.
This country, the American people who reach their hand across the border to people they don't even know, they don't have any connection to. That says a lot about them.
Appreciate it.
So wherever you're helping people, whether it's here or there or somewhere, it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, send me a text, 657-227-6459. Steve, thank you so much for asking. Thanks, Danny and Phil. Can't wait to see you on here again. Oh, he thinks we're leaving, but not quite yet. Almost. Ethan, I think, is the right size. He keeps the rod on the rail. I get on him to keep a bend on the rod. He may be doing better than me.
Well, if he's got it on the rail,
right?
If he's got it on the rail, he's already got, he's already got it down. I mean, even if it's 90 degrees, you know, he's still keeping more pressure on it than if you're above 90, you drop off, the pressure drops off substantially. So that's a good way to fish.
Brandon says, great show. You two are amazing. I think this guy's amazing. He's sitting in front of me here. That's amazing. Tangle Diver, great show. Good night, folks. I guess we're out of here almost, but not quite. I hate to end shows because Danny, I could go for
Oh
hours.
yeah, I'm the
I
same
really
way.
couldn't. You can too.
Gas bag, yeah.
Glenn Gray, but we got Janelle up front,
There
and
you
we
go.
got the guys over at the Rod and Reel Club waiting for us. Glenn Gray, if we were fishing 30-pound braid, couldn't we use 50-pound fluorocarbon? And would they see that and not bite?
I've tried a lot of that. I've tried a lot. You could do that. You can do that too.
You mean
I
up
think
the
a lot of
up the fluorocarbon?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on what species you're fishing. 30-pound braid, depending on how big the fish are or whatever, can slice your hand pretty good. Even like in Mexico, fishing the Cabrilla, I fished this lighter rod, but I had it loaded with a 60-pound braid, and I used a 60-pound top shot on it, which is normally a 20-pound, 25-pound rod. So I overloaded it, but I'm throwing the swim baits, the Daiwas, and handles it phenomenal. But it depends, But on saltwater stuff where you're fishing the bigger fish, I tend to see the smallest braid I have is used for backing, though, straight backing. And that's the smallest one I'm using is even on the 20-pound, I think it's about 65. I might have some 50 on some of them, but 65 usually is the smallest. Yeah.
Steve Bermudez down there in Ensenada says, "Thanks, Danny, but now I'm going to be bored again if you're going to cut the show off. Keep going." He wants us to keep going. Hey, we're almost at 2 hours, so if we're going to get over to the Redondo Beach
Wow.
Rod and Reel Club, I know.
What a bunch of windbags.
Blah, 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 blah. The two of us. This is a time of the year to be thankful for so much.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm thankful that you and I are doing this together now because
we're
the
blessed.
reception is fantastic.
That's
and
cool.
it's only going to get
cool.
bigger and better. And wait till we get into the season. It's wintertime.
And Phil, there's a lot of things, and I'm going to show you. You didn't even get to see it, but I got a lot of things that we pull out of my tackle shed that, I could walk through there and just show you some of the historical things that I've been blessed to be around. Russ brought me in to promote, Spectra. And, I wasn't even 100% until after we really got into it. But, we look at it now, see how it impacted our industry, changed fishing completely.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed to be around a lot of that. And the same with some of the rod companies, the reel companies we worked with, and tackle, hooks, ringed hooks, this, that. Some of the tests that we did, like even on these things, to find out how much stronger they were for this size, and it's just ran tests that I don't think were ever done back in those days. So we've just kind of taken it to a little different level, and I think we have it dialed in a little bit more. But there's it's never ending, and that's what I love about our Southern California anglers too. A lot of it, and we talked is because they're coming from backgrounds of aerospace or a technology company or JPL, Disneyland, Hollywood, somewhere, but they're out there upper echelons of their industries, and they don't settle. When I traveled and fished with people around the country, they're doing the same things they did 30 years ago. They're not going to change. I think did I tell you about the story about New Orleans?
I don't know.
Well, let me do
I
that
don't know
one
if you
real
told
quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm at a Bassmaster Classic down there in New Orleans. They want to see, so I bring these bass in the booth because they, at the time of, we were dialed in on those things. And Toyo Shimano, this is right after Shimano bought G. Loomis, comes by the booth. He says, "Hey, do you want to fish?" I says, "What do you think?" Of course I want to fish. He says, "Well, this guide wants to go head to head with you tomorrow, take you down in the bayou." I said, "Fine, cool, send him by." So he was sitting in the Shimano booth. He sent him over to the G. Loomis booth. So I says, "Okay, what do I need?" He says, "Well, you need a 7-foot spinning rod with a spinning reel with 10-pound. I go, "Can I use a casting rod?" He goes, "No, you can't cast it that far." I go, "I'm going to try." So I grab a Loomis popping rod, a 10-foot casting popping rod, bass rod. Then I walk in the Shimano booth and I get a, I think it was a Chronarch loaded with 10-pound. And we go out in the bayou the next day. We're running out, stops, he gets live shrimp, puts it in the well. It's just him and I, he wants to go toe to toe. we shoot out to the rigs. Okay, you get out to the rigs. I bait the shrimp, fire it up. It's every cast. It's crazy. Now I'm fishing Southern Cal style, conventionally. I'm grinding them. I bounce the fish. This guy's fishing a spinning rod. He's netting every fish, which the fish and the hooks and everything's getting tangled in the net. So now I'm bouncing the fish, shaking them off, firing out. Now I'm starting to double up on them. The more I double up on this kid just gets more frustrated and starts making mistakes and everything else. And so rather than change, he's going to do the same thing. So I'm asking him, I said, it's hitting the water and it's getting bit. I said, do you have any plastics? Don't you have any plastics? Oh, no, we don't use that stuff. I said, you don't have any? He says, yeah, I got one. Well, the bag was so old, you could hardly see that there's a plastic in it. You know how it gets that faded color and everything? So I take it out. It looked like one of the, you remember the salty dogs when we first
Yeah, heck yeah.
Just a rubber stick with a hook, right?
Yeah.
I go, okay, what the heck? And I'm used to pretty nice plastics, hand pours and stuff like this. Anyway, I take this thing, tie it on. I fire it out there. Now I'm doing 3-to-1 on him, because I don't even have to put a bait on. I just fire it out, shake it off. But this guy you think he would change? Would not change.
Wow.
These are the guys that go, wow, you got lucky. Yeah, I did. I got lucky. I got lucky. I got lucky being around the crowd that we got to fish with here in Southern California, because we have a totally different mindset. And for me, like even on that Legends trip with those guys, I knew these guys. They're all great fishermen.
Yeah, right.
You got to be at the top of your game. What I was processing in that time was just like a computer going haywire, trying to think, okay, what do I got to do? Can I go up the heavier line? They're getting bit on 20 and they're smaller fish. I stay with the smaller hook so I can get bit. Lengthen out and I knew right then. I said, oh my God, I got short top shots on my 20 and 25. That's not cutting it. Those bluefin can see it. So thank God I went to the 30, because that's when I started hanging those fish, and they were all the bigger units. I wish I could have hung a smaller one, but but again, that processing that we have as Southern Californians, that's an edge that we have over a lot of guys in the country. And the people wonder why we do these, have these catches, because we're constantly trying to improve, constantly, running things through our heads.
Which is exactly why we just keep getting all these great questions.
That's
these are the Southern California anglers.
These
right?
are Southern California anglers.
Yeah.
We're the best in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that, and I'm not kidding.
Because they're trying to learn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're open.
The only other place where I've seen technical stuff that rivals us, and some of them even better, is in Japan. It's amazing. When I went over there, it was amazing, some of the things I saw, and these guys, the lengths that they go through for different things, I saw stuff that, a machine that fuses spectrum. I go, wow, it's like a drill press. And they put it together, and I'm asking the president of Torres, how much pressure does it lose by doing this? It doubles the strength there. I go, whoa. But I mean, there's only a few places in the world that have that mentality. We're blessed to be one of them.
Steve Bermuda says, tell the Redondo Rod and Reel Club to get a smart TV with an internet connection so you guys don't have to show up there. All right, Steve, tell Danny and I how we're going to get carne asada tacos on a smart TV.
We're going over Let me start packing up.
Yeah, you're ready, right? Now you're really ready to go.
No, you know what?
These guys put on a hell of a food over there.
Oh, do they?
Oh my God, you're going to get fed
Tell
tonight.
them put it in a box, but yeah,
bring it home to
these
Gail.
guys are. Yeah, I love talking to people. Well, they're fishermen too, but yeah,
you're going to love these guys.
Yeah.
Sniper G and Danny, do you have a preference on brand of fluorocarbon based on whether the rod is all graphite or a graphite glass composite?
I'm actually on that. I did some of the initial negotiating over in Japan with a company called Toray, which is one of the largest companies in Japan. And I brought back fluorocarbons, and I've been utilizing those on the sly, But, all of them are very good. The Iser, all of them are. The original one, Seagar, excellent stuff. That's actually where I fished the original one. I was getting ready to go on my 6-day trip on the American Angling. This is what Danny Sansom had it. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
Right? Before Brian. And Richard Hightower came in and he repped them. And he says, "Hey, try this." He shows me the cigar knot, the whole deal. So he hands me off a spool. And so we get to Guadalupe, and you know how scratchy that fish you can get. Well, it was scratchy. I scratched 18 that first day, and I'm looking, I'm going, with 50-pound fluoro. He showed me the cigar knot, the whole deal, and I'm going, there's something to this. And great white's got a couple of those fish, but I said, there's definitely something to this. So the next day, you have the guys, you ever see the guys on the rail, Phil, that are sitting like this? Current's going uphill, and they're just sitting here.
Yeah, right.
It's going up.
Not paying attention.
Not doing it. Yeah, not doing anything. So
Yeah.
I said, do me a favor, wind up and come here. Bring your rod over here. So I take about that much fluoro, splice it on. Again, puts a sardine out. He's doing this, and all of a sudden, I walk around. I start changing out everybody to a top shot of that cigar. Which at the time was was brand new. It was. I don't know if that was a prototype spool that Richard gave me, but anyway. It made me a believer from day one. Day one, where I was used to camouflage lines and stuff. This was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Let's see. I hate to bring this old stuff up, but on Tuesday's show, Brian said you needed more drag beyond strike. What would you be looking for in a reel? How much more drag at full would you need or want? That might be a question for Brian, since he was the one.
Yeah, because,
and
I'll be honest with you, I'm old school.
Yeah.
Phil, I just take my reels, take my rods, and I still put it at strike, and I just go, all right, it's good.
You know what? Me too. Yeah.
I'm not pulling
You're not
the
getting
scale.
with a scale
I'm not
or-
doing
yeah.
the scale. I'm sorry. I'm just real old school. But it's worked for me. I'm not a big cow long range fisherman, so that I'm not taking that much out of it. I think if I would have to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I'm pretty much old school on that. I go by what I feel.
Fish Guys is recommending Don Jose's wet burritos, I think. And Steve Bermuda says, put the carne asada tacos in a box and Uber it over. I'm getting the feeling that Steve Bermudez is an antisocial guy. Look, Steve, we actually want to go over there and see all these guys. They're really nice guys. We like all these guys. We're not trying to avoid people. Steve, that's why you're bored in Ensenada. You're all alone.
Yeah.
Get out and see some people.
That's
Just
funny.
kidding. Another 30 years of experience in 2 hours. Thank you. Steve's a great guy.
Awesome.
And when we're doing a clothing drive or something, Danny,
Yeah.
he's the first guy there.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's why I'm
That's
kidding him.
awesome.
So.
Phil, I'm
Yeah.
looking up and I see something on top about the fluorocarbon.
Yeah.
Depending on a
Did I miss
graphite
something?
or graphite and
Oh,
glass,
right.
a composite.
Yeah.
And I'm using all straight graphite. So, a lot of times what we used to do is particularly with mono, this is before fluoro, is it depended on the stretch factor on the mono as far as what I'd use. I'm using all graphite because I want to take the max out of the rod. I want to take the max out of the reel, everything. I want to have the drag. And I used a lot of, for a while I was repping Toray, which was Blackwater for a little bit.
Yeah, right.
I went to Japan to negotiate that. And that was a great line. That's Toray. You can go online and I can show you the Japanese packaging for it, but that's a great line. But then I use, all the Iser stuff. Same, it all works, folks. All works great. I
Perfect.
smoke tested all that. Yeah.
Danny, we're at 2 hours now. We got to get out of here,
Oh.
man. So let me just read a few more. Glenn Gray says, boy, what a great show. I'm blessed to be here tonight. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Danny. Hey, Dan,
I
Glenn,
love being here.
Thank you, right?
Absolutely.
Glenn, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That's lovely. Albert Pont says, hey, you guys better get going. Carne asada is better when it's fresh. Albert is speaking truth. I'm listening, Albert. I'm listening to you, my friend. Jack Sepulveda says, thank you both. And Isaac says, I'll send more money to order some tacos to keep the show going. Isaac,
Thanks for the support, guys. Honest. Yeah,
Danny, look
it's
at
great.
look at your audience out there because they love you. You've done
Thank you,
such a
folks.
great job, man. I can't thank you enough.
Think during the week of anything you want to know, and I'll be ready for it.
Thursday night, 6 p.m.
Yeah,
right?
and I'll tell you if I know it. If I don't, I'm not going to BS you. Yeah, but I've been I've always been very blessed being around the right people at the right time in this industry. You know, that guys have set trends on from Russ Iser. To me, it's been, the Spectra line has changed the game for all of us. And he took a lot of heat from a lot of captains, a lot of different people that did not believe in it, And I was blessed to be his partner when we were launching that. And now we can look back and in his honor, the guys that all scoffed at Spectra, I go, hey, pretty nice now, huh? You don't have to put a guy in a skiff to chase a tuna down, or you don't have to throw a backup rod and reel on. But I mean, just the fishability of it and everything else, he had all the foresight back then. But I was blessed being around a lot of these guys, real guys, rod manufacturers, every aspect of it, So I want to share that with you. That's what it's all about.
I'm blessed to be around you. The Danny Kadota Show, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Danny and I'll be doing a lot of other stuff together. I'll be here with the morning briefing tomorrow morning, bright and early, for all of you. And Danny, another fantastic show. Thank you, my friend. Enjoy it.
You got it. See you next week.
Let's go eat some carne asada tacos.
I'm there. Holy smokes.
Yeah, no kidding, right?